The two Tottenham players James Maddison must follow before injury return for Roberto De Zerbi. The Tottenham Hotspur midfielder was shown in training on Wednesday, but caution has been urged over the England international. The images of James Maddison training with his fellow Tottenham players gave hope to supporters, but they also arrived with a note of caution. The 29-year-old has faced a long road back after rupturing his anterior cruciate ligament in his right knee during Spurs' pre-season last year, towards the end of Sun Heung-min's farewell game in South Korea against Newcastle United on August 3. Maddison has documented his rehabilitation from those early days after the surgery on his YouTube channel, so the fans have been able to go on the journey with him. His most recent video, filmed weeks before it was released a fortnight ago, showed him taking his first steps back into working with the ball on the Hotspur away pitches with other players also in rehabilitation. All these weeks on, Wednesday's video footage from Roberto De Zerbi's training session showed Maddison involved in some of it with his first team mates, and then on Thursday he was again captured with the team as they worked towards Saturday's Premier League game against Brighton. Relegation threatened Tottenham, and De Zerbi desperately need creativity in the team, and Maddison has been a huge part of the club's better performances in recent years before missing all of this season so far. So it is natural that the fans would want him to play some part in the final 6 matches of the season as Spurs attempt to avoid relegation. However, caution has been urged around Maddison without any expectation that he is about to step back into Premier League football right now, and that is simply part of his reintegration at this stage of rehabilitation. It has been just under 8.5 months since he suffered that injury in Seoul, having only recently before that game come back from a medial collateral ligament injury into pre-season training. Players coming back from anterior cruciate ligament injuries take their time after first returning to full training, increasing the load on their bodies with the twisting and turning and eventually contact nature of sessions. Maddison need only look at 2 of his team mates to see the path taken. The most recent, Radu Dragusin, returned to training in September last year, 8 months after injuring his ACL in his right knee during Spurs' Europa League win against Elfsborg the previous January. The Romanian would not play any match football until he got 45 minutes in a behind-closed doors friendly against Leyton Orient at Hotspur away 2 months later. He did not make a Premier League squad until the following month, in December against Liverpool, and finally made his competitive return to action in the final 5 minutes of Spurs' 1-0 win at Crystal Palace on December 28. The last time Tottenham won a Premier League game. That meant Dragusin did not return to competitive action for almost 11 months after his ACL injury. There is also Rodrigo Bentancur, who had a swifter timeline and is back in training himself right now after recovering from a serious hamstring injury suffered in January. The Uruguayan also has experience of an ACL injury, picked up on February 11, 2023 in a match against Leicester City. The midfielder was back in full training with his team mates in around the same time as Maddison, just shy of 8.5 months after suffering the injury. Then Spurs manager Ange Postecoglou said on October 20, "Well, be careful with him. He's now fully training, so he's into the whole session. We've fed him into training in the last sort of month, and he's coped pretty well with that. Now he's into full training. We've got to be mindful that he's missed a fair bit of football. I think the more he trains with the first team over the next few weeks, well, pick out moment, but he's looking good at training. We're looking forward to getting him back." There was a shock though as Bentancur came off the bench for the final minute of normal time, again in a win at Crystal Palace, on October 27. He would play half-hour cameos in the next 2 games in November before a surprise start against Aston Villa at the end of that month, in which he tore ankle ligaments after a challenge by Matty Cash to put him out for another month. Maddison will be looking at Bentancur's ACL return and hoping to emulate his timeline rather than Dragusin's, although the recovery length is different for everyone and dependent on a range of factors. Much depends on how full his involvement currently is in and training with De Zerbi's side. One boost for Maddison came in his first YouTube video after his surgery, when Bentancur explained back then that his recovery was longer than Maddison's would be because he also damaged the meniscus in his knee, which the England international did not. De Zerbi's predecessor Igor Tudor told Football.London that he was hopeful Maddison would play some part this season, and the club's vice-captain will be desperate to help the team in these tense final weeks. However, he will also have to be mindful of not placing any risk whatsoever on his body at a crucial time in his career. In that first video after the surgery, Maddison said, "I've already looked at the average time out. If it's 8 months, 6 months isn't a question. The stage I'm at now, this needs to be right now. I'm 28, I'm going to be 29 when I return, I'm in my prime, really. These are my peak years ahead of me. I need to come back and I need to stay fit. So actually I'm not going to be pushing to say, oh, why are you taking so long, sort of thing. But if it gets to 8 months and we're flying or whatever, if I'm in the right frame, that will allow me to play this season, won't it?" Towards the end, all eyes are on what the answer to that question ends up being and whether Maddison can play any role in the weeks ahead. Sky has upgraded its Ultimate TV and Sky Sports bundle to now include HBO Max, Netflix, Disney, Discovery, and Hayu, as well as 135 channels and full Sky coverage of the Premier League and EFL. Sky broadcasts more than 1,400 live matches across the Premier League, EFL and more, with at least 215 live from the top flight alongside Formula 1, darts and golf. Tottenham have turned their attention to a young defender who recently kept a clean sheet against them as they look to make big changes to the backline. Reports over recent weeks have claimed that Spurs may cash in on Christian Romero this summer, even if they remain in the Premier League. Additionally, there continues to be plenty of speculation on the future of Mickey van der Ven, who is on the radar of several top European clubs. Amidst fears of losing their senior centre-back Bear, the Lily Whites are ready to turn their attention to Sunderland man, who impressed in their 1-0 defeat to the Black Cats on Sunday. Tottenham battling for Premier League clubs for Noah Sadiki. According to Team Talk, Tottenham have now turned their attention to Sunderland starlet Noah Sadiki, who has had a very impressive debut season in the Premier League following his switch from Union SG last summer. The report claims that Man United had been tracking their young defender, but they have now been joined in the race by several other clubs. One of those is Spurs, who have been long-term admirers of Sadiki, but their ability to push ahead with a move will depend on whether they secure Premier League status. Additionally, Chelsea are carrying out background checks on the Sunderland man, while Arsenal have also been impressed by his performances. Finally, Everton have also tracked the Congo international closely ahead of the summer as they look to reinforce their backline. Sunderland taking hardline stance on Spurs target Sadiki. However, Team Talk make it clear that despite the mounting interest in the defender, Sunderland are adamant that they will not lose any of their prized assets this summer. The Black Cats want to push for European qualification next season and see Sadiki as being key to those ambitions. Manager Regis Labris sees the centre-back as a central figure in the club's long-term project, and the club has no intention of selling the Anderlecht Academy graduate. Tottenham fans have been handed a potential boost ahead of the weekend, as Rodrigo Bentancur edges closer to a return, prompting a wave of mixed reactions across the fan base. In typical Tottenham Hotspur fashion, Roberto De Zerbi was welcomed to North London with a fresh injury right before the clash against Sunderland at the weekend, after Mohamed Kudus suffered a setback in his recovery, one that requires surgery and will keep him out until the summer. The injury problems only continued as De Zerbi then lost captain Christian Romero in the clash against Sunderland after the centre-back collided with goalkeeper Anton Nkinksi. Romero is now set to miss 5 to 7 weeks of action, an injury that effectively rules him out for the rest of the season. Tottenham boost as Rodrigo Bentancur returns to training before Brighton clash. We reported earlier that 8 players are set to be unavailable for Spurs' weekend clash with Brighton and Hove Albion, but a fresh development hints that the number could be reduced by 1. The Spurs players trained on Wednesday, and among those spotted on the training pitches was Rodrigo Bentancur, who has been injured for 3 months but has now returned to first-team training, which is certainly a boost for De Zerbi's side. However, it remains unclear if he will be included in this weekend's matchday squad when Tottenham welcome Brighton to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Reacting to the update, several Spurs supporters took to social media to share their views. One fan expressed caution over his return, stating, "So was Kudus, supposedly back in training. But being Spurs, nothing can be taken for granted." Another added, "Too late. We are finished." While one supporter showed excitement, stating, "Let's fingo Yahoo." A different fan welcomed the news, saying, "Thank FK for that. Creative genius," while another struck a more measured tone, "Glad to see him back. We need everyone back for the journey ahead. Every match feels like a final now. No shaking." One supporter offered a more critical take, commenting, "He is not the player he was and he needs to be replaced at some point, but he is much needed right now. One of the few midfielders that can be calm and press resistant in midfield. The rest are too chaotic." Spurs need Rodrigo Bentancur to steady midfield in final stretch. It is no surprise that many Tottenham fans are not overly optimistic about Bentancur's return to training. One reason for that is his involvement in the Spurs side that struggled under Thomas Frank in the early part of the season. Bentancur was often criticised for his lack of progressive forward passing under the Dane, frequently opting for safer, sideways options. While he can be guilty of playing too safely, Bentancur, however, is capable of operating under pressure, a quality that will be useful if Spurs are to maintain control in games. The hope now is that the midfielder can rediscover form under Roberto De Zerbi and develop into a more well-rounded midfielder in the final months of the season.